I have talked with countless people who are struggling to understand what is going to happen with student loan debt. Student loans have gone back into repayment. What happens if you don't pay? How is the interest accrued? And what options do you have if you can't afford to pay? We'll go over all of that and more in this video, so let's get started. Hi, my name is Ben and I am the CEO of Ascend Finance. You may have heard that student loans are going back into repayment, starting with interest accrual from September 1st, 2023, and payments due starting in October 1st, 2023. The Supreme Court blocked President Joe Biden's student debt cancellation plan, leaving borrowers wondering what their options are to deal with their student debt as repayments resume. One of the biggest questions that I receive every day are, what are the consequences of not paying your student loans? Many people are already living paycheck to paycheck, so what just happens? This is what happens. Although the 12-month on-ramp will prevent your account from being reported to the credit reporting agency as delinquent and also prevent your loans from being considered in default and sold to debt collectors, you would still accrue interest on your loans if you do not pay your student loans. Now, the next question you probably have is, what happens after the 12-month on-ramp period if you continue to not be able to pay your student loans? As of now, if you do not pay your student loans after the 12-month on-ramp period, a couple things may happen. First, they may be reported to the credit bureaus as delinquent and sold to collection agencies, which would have a negatively impact on your credit score and open you up to collection calls. Second, the loan providers may be able to pursue legal action and try to receive the payment in the form of a judgment, wage garnishment, lien through a lawsuit. Next, we're going to cover how to deal with student loans going into repayment. And there's a couple things that I think are going to be really interesting and potentially helpful for you to know. Now, with student loans going back into repayment, you may be wondering what your options are to keep up with the payments, especially if it seems like you won't be able to even make those payments. Here are some options that you can consider to deal with your student loans directly and indirectly. And before I go any further, if you are enjoying this video or it's been helpful, I always ask if you consider liking this video, as it tells Google that it can be helpful to other people that are struggling with student loan debt. And if you want other content to see other content that helps you get out of debt cheaper, easier, and faster, please consider subscribing, because I'm always creating new content. All right, so how do you deal with the payments if you are unable to make them? Discharging student loans in bankruptcy. Now, although it may be harder to discharge some debt than other debts in a bankruptcy, student loans could potentially be dischargeable through a bankruptcy. Depending on whether your student loan is private or federal loans, it may be treated and potentially discharged differently in a bankruptcy. According to the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, some private student loans could be discharged along with other debt in a bankruptcy. It may be helpful to speak with a bankruptcy attorney in a free consultation to confirm if your private student loans are dischargeable. What's interesting is that other private and federal student loans could be potentially discharged in bankruptcy as well. In these cases, the debtor would need to file an adversary proceedings, and the bankruptcy courts find that paying back that student loan would be a cause of undue hardship. It's really important to note that getting student loans discharged through a bankruptcy can be difficult and might not work for everyone. Many times, with a lot of the bankruptcy attorneys we work with, they're not even willing to pick up the cases that require the adversary proceedings because of the complexity and time it takes. There's one bankruptcy attorney that we work with specifically that has had success with student loans and discharge. The challenge is that not everyone may be able to qualify for that undue hardship that is set. So if you're interested in seeing whether you may qualify, please consider using the link in the description below. We will be able to check and see whether you may be a good fit for that and set you up with a free consultation. Now, you're probably wondering, what is an adversary proceeding? An adversary proceeding is essentially a lawsuit inside or potentially outside of a bankruptcy. Now, you're probably wondering, are there other options outside of bankruptcy to discharge student loans besides going the bankruptcy route? And so let's cover that next. Like, what are your options if you can't discharge your student loans in bankruptcy, but you can't necessarily afford to pay them back? So here are a handful of options to consider. First, you can consider eliminating other debt besides your student loans to free up cash flow in order to afford your student loans. So if you're curious to see what options might be available or helpful to you, I left another link in the description below that you can compare your options for free with a debt options calculator. And some of these options may include bankruptcy, which you're probably thinking maybe not that way, potentially debt relief, also known as debt negotiation, nonprofit credit counseling, and potentially consolidation loans as well, if it can free up your interest rate. Second, loan forgiveness or cancellation or discharge. According to the US Department of Education, there are a handful of ways to get your federal student loans forgiven. Now, these are specific for such jobs as teachers, potential government employees, nonprofit workers, healthcare professionals, individuals with disabilities, and potentially people under the income-driven repayment plans. You may also qualify to discharge your student loans if your school closed or misled you, or for a handful of other reasons. So it's really good to kind of look into these different options. Now, thirdly, you also may look at alternative repayment plans. Now, if you have a federal student loan, you can consider reaching out to your loan provider to work together on a repayment plan that would actually work for you. Now, some of these repayment plans are, potentially a graduated repayment plan, income contingent repayment plans, and potentially even pay as you earn plans. So that's one option to consider. Fourth, you can consider loan consolidation. Now, federal student loans can be consolidated into a single federal loan, which can streamline the payment. While this might not save you money, it can still save you time and effort. Fifth, strategic payment methods. Use a payoff plan like the Avalanche or Snowball or Savvy method to prioritize your payments towards your debt and reduce your principal so you can get out of debt cheaper, easier, and faster. And finally, refinancing. You could also consider refinancing your student loans with a private lender. Ideally, you can refinance with a lower interest rates so you can also save on the interest. Now, if you're interested in this option, check out the link in the bio because we know a great company that helps you try to offer the best refinancing deal by grouping together and then negotiating as a whole instead of trying to negotiate specifically like you're going to the bank and trying to negotiate. And the last thing I want to talk about is deferment and forbearance. Federal student loans offer options for deferment and forbearance, allowing you to temporarily postpone your payments. Now, deferment doesn't accrue interest during the approved period, while forbearance might add the accrued interest to the principal. So it's important to know the differences between those two concepts. The final question I'm going to ask is, what option is right for you? And if you're not sure, feel free to give me a call if you have any questions or clarifications at 833-272-3631. We would love to pass you over to potentially a reputable firm that can help you see if your student loan can be discharged, or just help you try to figure out how to free up cash flow to afford your student loan debt. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it's been helpful. Comment below if you have any questions. And if you did find this video helpful, I always appreciate a like or subscribe. I hope you have a great day.